Hi everyone, thank you for your time today with the Rapido Monthly Update webinar for April 2024. My name is Megan Weldon, I'm Rapido Product Manager, and I'm happy to be here with you today. Our webinar today will follow a familiar format if you've been to these webinars in the past. First, we'll speak to topics about the Rapido community. Then we'll dive into highlights for this upcoming monthly release. We'll then go to addressing some frequently asked questions as of late, and then spend some time with questions you might have today at the end of our session. Right, first off, topics for and of our Rapido community. The first item under this topic is the upcoming Illuna Conference. The registration is open. The Illuna Conference will be taking place May 14th through 17th in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I look forward to seeing you there. If you plan to attend, you can let us know in the chat, or if you want to connect when you're there too, please reach out via email and we can make sure to set up some time to connect in Minneapolis. Another important event coming up for the community is the Igloo Conference. This one isn't until September, but our team looks forward to seeing you there in September. And one more great event to share with you today is an upcoming webinar at the end of this month. Don't worry, I will put the registration link in the chat at the end of our session today, so you can register for this event if you have not already done so. This presentation will continue previous discussions on both how data and algorithms can perpetuate social inequality within technology services, while also focusing on opportunities for individuals and organizations to prevent, identify, and address DEI concerns within library software solutions. The presentation's guest speaker is Dr. Sophia Noble from UCLA, joined by Alan Jones from New School Libraries and hosted by Judith Frankel from Libris. So I'm really excited for this one on April 30th. I'll share the registration link with you so that you can also attend. Okay, diving into topics for the Rapido release for May, we're going to just touch on the highlights of the May release today. Okay, the first highlight is an update to the Article Galaxy Cloud app. So this screen shows you're in your interface. There's the little icon there made up of several squares. That is the Cloud App Center, and you can search for the Article Galaxy add-on Cloud app. For libraries who have been using this Cloud app, there are no changes that you need to make at this time. You'll just notice some new functionality. So the left hand is a screenshot of what you might have experienced in the Cloud app previously if you're familiar with use. That red box labeled not an AG collection, ask about options. So if there wasn't an unknown price, you would not be able to purchase it in the Cloud app. However, now, due to need expressed by libraries, we have support the option to purchase articles even if the price is unknown. And you can see what that looks like on the right-hand side with the label price unavailable request anyway. So for folks who may be less familiar with using this Cloud app, some use cases that I hear about most commonly from our library colleagues are using this Cloud app to acquire articles that maybe went unfilled from your established partners. So they have an article that went through their network and it did not get filled. They'll then take it to this Cloud app for purchase. Another common use case that I hear about from colleagues is using it to handle their copyright. So one of the ways that they use it is to talk about, instead of submitting a copyright payment report at the end of the year and making payments in one lump sum, when their copyright rules are triggered, they will evaluate that request and take it into the Cloud app for purchase at that time. There may be other use cases for these Cloud apps, but these are the two that I hear about most often. So how does that come into play? So once you've downloaded the Cloud app and set up your credentials, you may use it from an unfilled borrowing request or whatever kind of, an unfilled borrowing request, but for whatever reason that suits you in your situation. From the request, you can open the Cloud App Center, You can then open the particular cloud app and select the request, and then select it within the cloud app and hit the option request all one items or whatever number of items it is you have selected. The purchased content, when purchased through the Article Galaxy add-on cloud app, will be delivered to your end user as usual for their article requests. Okay, the next big item for the May release is the functionality to connect with WorldShare and Tapasa partners. So we're releasing the functionality to make it now possible for Rapido libraries to connect with Tapasa or WorldShare ILL partners. The connection is through a peer-to-peer setup using the ISO 18626 protocol and setup. So again, you'll be able to connect with those partners who are using Tapasa or WorldShare. You'll be able to connect with them via peer-to-peer setup, so using Aroda. If you're familiar with setting up peer-to-peer partners with Alma, it's similar, except here you have some distinctions about what the profile type and system type are going to be. Additionally, you will need to get an API key, and that API key will be provided by OCLC. And you'll need to contact them to get that API key. The partners who you are working with to get these connections set up, the connections on their end, they will need to ask OCLC for instructions on what the setup may look like for them. Okay, our next developments that are of the May release are more related to the theme of personalize. I think sets are one of the most obvious ways that folks personalize the way that they utilize Rapido. With the May release, you'll see a new functionality that lets you search for specific facets within your set creation or set searches. My example here is I am working on creating a new set related to physical items or looking for a particular request with a physical attribute. And thus I've searched, and now I can facet accordingly and save that search facet as a set for my workflow in the future to go back to again without having to search again in the future. Okay, another aspect of the May release is the capacity to customize your set facets. And how we do that is through this little gear icon. The selection of the gear icon will open a menu, and from that menu we see the option Facets Customization. Selecting that facets customization opens another menu with all of our different set facets that are familiar to us. You are able to customize the order and visibility of the different facets. So you can drag and drop or deselect them if you were so inclined. You would then need to apply your changes in order for them to take shape and for them to be visible in your environment. And then what does this look like? So the left-hand screen is kind of a default view, what that looks like now included with the search bar. So you can see my order of things are Rapido indicator, then labels, and activity status. After I've reorganized things, I have status listed at the top, and then labels, and then creation date. And I made that choice intentionally because those are the facets that I use the most when I create sets, and we'll be working on creating sets in my library. So again, this customization can be tailored to you and your interests at your library. Okay, something else I wanted to touch base on is in the May release, you'll also find the ability to exclude particular facets from your search. So this example, you see you can exclude the US pod as a facet within your search. You will not, even though you'll see that in the May release, you will not be able to save sets or based on those excluded facets. And I figured this would kind of prompt some questions, so wanted to let you know the capacity to save sets based on excluded facets will be coming in the June release. So perhaps an example is you're creating a set, and maybe you're creating a set for in your lending side of the house, right? And you want to look at all things that need to be processed, but maybe you want to exclude requests that are from your own library in that set, and so that you can add your own library into a request from your own library in a different set, so you can organize your workflow to separate out your fill locally requests versus your requests from a different partner per se. There are various other scenarios where you might want to exclude a facet from your search, and that that will also come into play in your actual sets next month in the June release. Okay, so those were the main highlights for the May release. A lot of great content in the May release. There's also a lot of fixed bugs and Salesforce cases. I didn't want to dive into them today, but it's a really long list that you can look at in the release notes, which I can also share the link with you at the end of this conversation today. But one thing that I wanted to spend a bit of time on today is a frequently asked question that I've been hearing quite a bit about. Um, as you're familiar with, we've released a lot of functionality over the last few months regarding self-registration functionality. And those various releases have prompted a lot of questions that I hope we will be addressing with the upcoming slides today. If you have more questions, we can have additional conversations, but hope to run through a big picture of how you may use this self-registration functionality that we've been releasing. Okay, self-registration, things to know. Let's start here. How would I use a self-registration functionality at my library? Well, there really are two flavors, and I'm only going to get into one flavor today. One flavor is making it so that you can allow just users to register as individual users, nothing else. That flavor is a little bit simpler, but I didn't want to confuse things by diving into two different topics today. So today, the topic that we're going to really be speaking to is the use case that we hear more questions about and a greater interest about, honestly, and that is using the self-registration functionality to allow other partners to register at your library. So once I enable this functionality and use this functionality or configure this functionality at my library, who can register? Well, the registration forms are openly available. So that's something to note. They'll be available for others to just select the link and go forward from. Why might I enable the self-registration functionality in the first place? What considerations might I make, and why would it be useful for my library? So an anticipated use case that we've heard about from folks is wanting to be a lending partner for another organization that may have information needs or access needs that either doesn't have a resource sharing solution of their own or doesn't have a collection or means to participate in the resource sharing ecosystem, but they still have access needs. For who this might be really is going to probably be dependent upon the identity factors of your institution and your collection. Maybe this is a law firm, maybe this is a government agency, it could be an independent researcher, maybe it's a museum, or maybe it's just really another information-seeking individual that you want to support with access to your collection. So these are the kind of use cases in the context really where you might be a lender to somebody or an organization or a group of somebody's, but they don't have a resource sharing solution to be working with you and facilitating lending from their end. So what considerations should I make? So big picture, the self-registration functionality creates a user, and then it automatically also creates a partner record. So we're going to talk through those different steps, but knowing that is the kind of the baseline is the foundation of this. Users, once registered, are accessing your discovery experience like a local user. Thus, we may want to create a user group that is specific for these users. And I say that because thinking about how we or we hear about libraries liking to use how they like their users to use their local library might vary from how you might want these folks to be using your library. For example, commonly, libraries might have display logic rules such that they don't allow resource sharing requests on their locally held items for their local users. They only allow resource sharing requests on items maybe held by other libraries. Not everybody's it fits this example, but it's just an example I'm going with today. But then when you want these self-registered users to experience your discovery layer and place requests, perhaps you're wanting to just allow them to place resource sharing requests on your locally held items, but not requests on others' collections. Thus, making these distinctions is going to be easiest if they are a unique user group. And then we can go through what it looks like to set up this user group at your library. Okay, so with that kind of context of how I might want to use the self-registration functionality in my library and what are the use cases, let's walk through kind of the big picture of what it might mean to pursue this functionality and use at your library. First steps in referencing or creating a new user group. So you already have user groups at your library, but having a unique user group might be helpful as far as how you can think about and set up the resource sharing services for this user group. So we're going to set up a new user group for our example here. Under configuration, user management, user details, user groups. Our example user group, we created our own code, external underscore RS, and our description is external users for RS, and our default value is going to be no. You're going to follow this user group example into assigning a record type for our user group. We're going to go into this configuration pathway under user management, user details, user record type, and then user group. We're going to find our user group in this nice long list of users that we have and add the record type of public. And then we can add the row and save it. The user group now is established and created at our library. Something that we found in our testing that we thought worth noting for all of you is checking that your user group will have a patron role. So after you go through your testing, and if you run into any bumps, that might be something to check, is that your user group does have a patron role. Okay, now that we have our user group, we want to look at our fulfillment unit roles, make sure that our user group is allowed to have resource sharing privileges. So we're going to go to our fulfillment unit rules under the resource sharing library at our institution. This may require changing the configuration scope that you were using previously. So that's under that configuring bar and the drop-down menu that comes up. We found the relevant fulfillment unit rule at our institution we were configuring, and we wanted to look at the rule type of borrowing resource sharing. We then decided that based on existing configuration, we needed to create a new rule for this user group. So we created a new fulfillment unit rule for this user group with the input parameter being user group equals the user group that we had created in the last few slides here. And we attached new terms of use that we also created. The important aspect of the terms of use that we created and attached are that it allows resource sharing. So you see that under the policy type, allow resource sharing is allowed. And the other aspect that was important for this functionality is that the personal delivery setup allowed personal delivery for the office. And then we'll want our partners to know that they need to be selecting the personal delivery work drop down when they're placing those requests. Okay, so that's kind of behind the scenes. Another aspect behind the scenes here is thinking about how these users are going to interact with our discovery and what their discovery results are going to be. So we want to look into our display logic rules. So unlike our other user groups, we want to allow the resource sharing request for this particular user group when availability by the institution is true. So in order to do that, we needed to hide this service from all of our other user groups that we have at our library. So we added all of these other user groups, and note our external for RS user group is not listed in this list. So we are hiding resource sharing request service when it's held or available at our institution, when that's true for all of the other user groups, thus it would allow it for our user group. Though we want this user group to have resource sharing results at our institution, we do not want them to have any of the other library services. So we needed to think about how to make that work with our display logic rules. So we needed to create a new display logic rule in our library environment where it was particular to this external users for RS user group, where we hid all of the other services at our library so that they were only seeing the resource sharing service. So that concludes kind of all of the sort of background pieces to think about and pursue in setting up the self-registration kind of user group that we will then associate with the self-registration functionality. So now that we've got those background pieces in place, what does it look like to actually enable self-registration at our library? Okay, so enabling self-registration. This part is a bit shorter, so here we go. So into the configuration, we're going to go into the discovery and then display configuration, and we'll go to configure views. Under this next screen on the right that opens up, as long as the display Rapido functionality checkbox is selected, you'll see the option to allow self-registration. For all libraries with Rapido today, the display Rapido functionality checkbox should be selected. That is expected that it is selected. So you should see the allow self-registration checkbox there available to you that you can then select. Once you've done that, we're going to go into making some configuration decisions about the self-registration functionality. We'll do that under configuration, resource sharing, configuration, borrower self-registration. You will then see, so that's the menu on the left that we follow to get there, and then that bottom screenshot shows what the screen looks like when it opens up. We see that we can define two different user groups if we wanted to, one for where individuals would register into, and the other organizations. So if we wanted to have that distinction, we could do so. But for the purposes of our example here today, we assigned them all to be one singular user group because that met the needs of our library. So we attached from our drop-down menu that opens, we selected the user group that we created in our previous steps. The other aspect that is important to note on this screen is we selected the checkbox create corresponding partner. So what that means then is when folks go to register as a user at our library, it will automatically create a partner record for us, and thus their requests will then go into the lending side of our workflow. If we didn't select the create corresponding partner, that's the other flavor of using the self-registration functionality that we aren't diving into today, because the use case that we hear most about is this need for it to result in partner creation. So we are going forward with selecting that create corresponding partner selection. Okay, the other aspect on this screen that we can use to customize is self-registration form customization. Making that selection takes us to this screen. And here we have all of these different codes and descriptions, and these are the essentially the labels that we see on our self-registration form. So maybe we want to change the language of that shows on those forms to change the messaging that folks would see so that it aligns with language we like to use at our library. We have that option here. And then just at a glance, what does that default form look like? On the left-hand side, we see if they've selected the individual form versus if they've selected the organization form. These are both the default. So perhaps I want to change the password field to say, instead of saying password, to create password, right? Something more prompting. You can do that on that code table that we saw on the last screen. So you can customize these forms for them to align with what you're wanting to get and the messaging you're wanting to deliver to those users. Okay, something else to know in the configuration, once they've registered and you have that create corresponding partner selected, a partner library is automatically created. When the partner library is created, you'll see in this box here of the resource sharing partner profile that the self-register box is automatically selected and the new request alert is automatically selected. So you don't need to worry about enabling this alert. This alert is enabled by default set to true. This means that any requests that come in from this partner will receive the new request created for partner alert. But those are just checkboxes to know will automatically be selected when your partner record's created. So what does that look like in actual functionality? So here's an example request here. We see that the request has the alerts icon. We see that we were able to facet our requests based on this alert. And we see what the alert message is if we open the alert. So that's what that alert looks like in practice. You don't need to do anything for configuration out of the box because it is enabled automatically and will be selected for your partner. Okay, we've gone through setting this up at our library, or we're considering setting this up at our library. Once this is all in place, what does it look like in functionality? What does it look like in practice? So on the left-hand side, our first little screenshot there is our typical login prompt. If now that because we've enabled self-registration functionality, we see that additional line, not a member yet, register here. Again, you can customize what that language says. If you want it to have a different message, it can be a different message. If the user selects that not a member yet, register here, they get our request form. That again, we can customize if we wanted it to be something different. So here I have ABC Library registering as an organization that is going to be a self-registered partner at my library. They have selected the checkbox with language that I have prompted within my registration form to agree to whatever terms I've put forth for them. And now that they've hit the register button on the right-hand side, it takes a moment to load, and then they get that option to log in. Now that they've hit that submit, we see that a partner record is created for them. So under fulfillment, under partners, under our institution, we see the name of the library who registered as our partner, or maybe it's law firm, or maybe it's government organization, whatever kind of partner it is that has gone through this process. Our example of ABC Library here, you can see that they've registered. You can see that they are created automatically as an email profile type partner. And you can see that the self-registration box is selected and the new request alert is automatically selected. So in my work, if I am want to at some point deselect the new request alert from this partner because I don't feel like I need to have the alert triggered by any requests from this partner in the future, I could come into this partner record and deselect the alert if I wanted to. But anyway, here is the partner record. It is automatically created from them doing that form. Now we're able to engage in our discovery like any other local user, and they can do whatever kind of searches they're going to do. My user here found this example, and they got the offer tiles, be able to place their request. My form is prompted, and they know to select the work address pickup location, and they get the request was successfully submitted response message. Okay, now I'm in my lending workflows, and maybe I want a set specific to this alert, right? So I could do that. I could have that in play. And then I can go now into my requests that are within that particular set, and I find my different requests that were created by the self-registered partners. Perhaps in my workflow, I would have a more delineating set because I see the created lending request and the shipped physically requests all in one place. And perhaps that is, not how I want to use my set. But for today's example, it's just based on the alert. And so I see these requests in place from these self-registered partners. It looks like a normal lending request, and I've got my partner's name there visible to me. I also see that alert icon that, again, if I open up, I can see what the particular alert is about, and I can process these as I would process them in my usual lending workflows. Okay, so that's a lot of content for today. I anticipate there may be questions, so I'm going to take a moment to share links with you from their presentation. As far as the self-registration functionality, I will be working with my colleagues to get kind of this holistic picture into our documentation so that you have reference to that in the future too, if you want to refer back to the details from today. And then I'll also give you my email address if you want to set up any conversations to go further with this topic. So let me stop sharing so it's a little bit easier to see the chat. Oh, and we are close to end of time, so I'll be quick here getting the links into the chat. And then if folks have further questions, please feel free to reach out. Happy to correspond via email or set up a meeting so that we can talk more to particulars at your library. Okay, awesome. Thanks, everyone. I see we're at time for today. If you have further questions, I'm happy to have more conversations afterwards. Thank you for your time.